I'd like to thank Sean Marie for asking me to do this. Sean Marie always is very thoughtful in who she asks to introduce the next speakers. And in this case, one of our speakers is an attorney who went to Syracuse University and graduated in 2000 and law school in 2003. Sometimes we get to talk to the speakers before they actually come up to the podium, and I thought that's great because as a fellow attorney, we have that together. And also, I grew up just outside of Syracuse, and I thought maybe I'd be able to tell her about some of my things that I saw at Syracuse University when I was a teenager. For instance, there was a bar up there called Jabberwocky that was right on the campus of one of the buildings, and that's where I used to go watch the Syracuse Jazz Lab play. It was a big improv bar. And I also saw my first football game at Archibald Stadium, the old concrete ice box. And then after I got done thinking about that, I started looking at Jamie's resume, and I started counting back. These things weren't gone before she got there. Those things were gone before she was born. At that moment, I thought, I don't know if Sean Marie did this as a favor to me or if it was just payback for making comments about sometimes that this party looks a little old. But in any event, it's an honor to introduce our next speakers because, while this is a little lighthearted, the topic that they're going to talk about is not lighthearted at all. Frankly, when I saw these law changes that they're about to talk to you about, these things reminded me that if you were going to Detroitify a state, these law changes probably would be a good way to start. Our speakers are Jamie Cain. She's a partner at the Rochester law firm of Boyle & Co., a 26-partner law firm, and they do a lot of commercial and litigation work. And Jamie is in the real estate department and handles all aspects of real estate, including landlord and tenant litigation. And she's a member of the New York State Bar Association and the Monroe County Bar Association, and also associations here in the Capitol relating to tenants' rights. Our other speaker is a very interesting person as an entrepreneur. He graduated in 1983 from Sage College, and he bought his first rental real estate property in 1985, which was 4 units and some commercial space, one commercial space. Today, he owns and operates 350 units and 15,000 square feet of rental real estate here in the Capital District. Judd Feiman is truly an entrepreneur and a person who is very involved with the Capital District real estate industry. He's been the president of Capital District Association of Rental Property Owners, and he's also been the president of New York Capital Region Apartment Association. These are people who very deeply understand and operate in the world in which these law changes related to landlord-tenant laws are changing. And unfortunately, they'll probably tell you some things that you don't want to hear today. So let's give them a warm welcome right now.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Judd Feiman. This is Jamie Cain. First of all, we'd just like to correct one thing. We're on the landlord side, not on the tenant side. Although we believe everybody should be able to work together. An interesting article today, which came out at midnight last night in the New York Post, and this has to do with New York City housing. And mind you, since the law has passed, this has affected housing across the state. CHIP, which is also an affiliate to the National Apartment Association, which we are also, manages about 400,000 stabilized units in New York City. Since the new law has passed, approximately 69% of landlords are unable to do the upgrades or maintain their properties the way they normally used to do that. This is since the law passed. Now, the law took effect June 15, 12:01 a.m. That's 7 months ago. Think how fast this law is made in effect into New York City and throughout the state of New York. Presently, as you know, what rent control does and the Tenant Protection Act is allowing people to have more rights, more strength than the landlords in allowing them to maintain their properties, maintain proper housing. The law initially was passed under the premise that it would provide more housing. To date, it has proven to be the opposite. Landlords had to get more tough on the regulations and the way that they would screen residents. because they can't get enough security deposits, or if they choose to, if they want to take a risk, they need a little bit more latitude. They need some more room in order to make the proper answers and decisions. With that, we have been unable to, and currently, which Jamie's going to tell you right now, about the new Tenant Protection Act that is presently being pushed.
Sure. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, the Housing Stability and Tenant Protection Act was presented as an omnibus bill. So there were 9 bills put all together and passed through. Most of them were intended for New York City. But the overwhelming impact of Part M, which completely changed the way that landlords can run their application process through their termination of their leases, was immediately impacted. And so what we started to see was that it was, as Judd alluded, harder for landlords to screen potential applicants. The immediate effect of that is that we're seeing that our neighborhoods are no longer as safe as they used to be. Landlords are unable to perform complete due diligence of the applicant. So they're no longer able to ask the prior landlord reference, was this a good tenant? Was this a safe tenant? Was this somebody that you would recommend be in the neighborhood? So that's the first immediate impact we saw. The second is that the market started to close itself off to certain groups of people. Students and our seniors have been overwhelmingly impacted by this. Unfortunately, because landlords have now had to increase their credit screening criteria, whether that be a credit score or whether that be the income to debt ratio, the exclusion of guarantors unless they're in the state of New York, we're shutting off certain people that it was unintended to affect. When we start to see our seniors not be able to get housing, that's a crisis. That wasn't intended to happen. But what the impact of that is everybody's arguing that there's not enough affordable housing, there's not enough units available. Well, all this law did was increase the vacancy rates because our landlords are not able to offer the unit to people they would normally do, or marginal tenants who were maybe not making the income or credit score, but who our landlords could take an advance from, or who our landlords could take a double security deposit from. With that, now the new law that's now being presented, because they continuously want to keep pushing us towards a model of socialistic housing, is the good cause eviction. So what they're presenting here is 2 things. 1, universal rent control, which would be, according to their metrics, 1.5% increases plus CPI. So roughly around a 3.3% increase annually. And that would be a cap. In addition to it, it would be a perpetual tenancy where landlords would not have the freedom to operate their business as a business, and instead, unless it fell into one of very enumerated circumstances, they could not refuse to offer a new lease to a tenant. So you can imagine that's taking the entire business cycle for someone like Judd out of what they're used to doing, and it disincentivizes landlords, who Judd will talk about that, to be able to continuously improve and purchase new housing.
Think about what that does. That allows a resident that might be a little bit unruly, not following the guidelines of their lease and the guidelines of the municipality. That resident now, as Jamie stated, is a perpetual resident. As a landlord, we wouldn't have the control to deny to renew the lease. And it's not even to deny, it's just we're sending a non-renewal letter. That renewal is 100% going to go into the benefit of that existing tenant. That existing tenant will say, yes, I'm staying, no, I'm not staying. Think about that. How can a resident tell a landlord, you will have to keep it? If you are creating a problem and you are affecting the building, the neighborhood, the community at large, why should that landlord be forced to keep you? You are affecting a greater amount of people than the unit in which you are renting itself.
And it's a slippery slope, everyone. So once we get into good cause, and it's a situation where a judge has to determine whether or not good cause standards been met, we're seeing from Buffalo to downstate to Long Island that we're continuously talking to as a coalition. We're seeing that everyone's interpreting the law already incorrectly or arbitrarily, or from one city to the other. It's not being continuously done the same way, just think about what the interpretations on what is good cause would be. So we're setting ourselves up for a very bad scenario for the judicial system, who I can tell you has called upon people like Judd and I to come in and actually train the judges in this state, because they have not had proper training on these laws, and they're just as confused by the text of many of these sections as we are. So to tell you what we've done as an association, immediately upon hearing the passage of this law, which we were already lobbying for in Albany to try and stop, we realized that landlords had never come together before to brainstorm how to stop things like this. And I think that we were all as a group remiss and not as proactive as we could have been. So in September, we ran our first meeting for upstate landlords, where we got 400 landlords to come to Churning Stone. And if anybody understands anybody in the real estate industry, it's like herding cats. Getting people to come to a meeting where they have to take a day off from their work is hard. But we were able to get 400. At that point, we were able to coalesce and come up with some ideals of where we saw the law's faults and try and make revisions to the text. We just had a lobbying day in Albany, where now we've taken this coalition. We recognize we do need the strength of New York City and Long Island to join with us, and so we are a full New York City-wide coalition, joining together to try and get our messaging out that these, for the most part, are small business landlords, all of whom are responsible and trying to provide housing for residents in the state of New York. And if these people were to start exiting the market, which we're already seeing occur, what would the state be looking like? And everyone who knows NYCHA housing and knows the problems that exist with that doesn't seem like the future's bleak, or the future's prospering. It seems rather bleak for tenants.
And just think about what that does. What that does to the local municipalities, it will reduce property taxes, school taxes, city taxes, and any other taxes which municipality presently charges, including code enforcement for RLPs, which are residential occupancy permits, or certificate of occupancies. All these things will be affected. So what is it really going to do to those local communities? It's going to harm them greatly. So who's going to have to pay for that? The seniors that still own their homes? Other people that own homes that are on fixed budgets, as it is so difficult out there presently, to take and make up for the inaccuracies or the unintended consequences of the law as it passed and the new bill that's presently being driven strong. If everybody looks at that and understands the overall effect is nothing positive. As Jamie stated, vacancy is up, occupancy is down. Those two factors in itself did not provide one single housing unit more. It is in the opposite direction, and with that being in the opposite direction, who are we really helping? We're not helping anybody within the state of New York. We are actually disincentivizing them to live in the state of New York, which we are the fastest state of people wanting to leave right now of all 50 states.
We're starting to see it hit other areas as well. So my representation of my clients is mostly investors across the state. Again, mainly small business owners who maybe own the max 5,000 units. So comparatively speaking, they're not these billionaire landlords we're speaking of. Although it doesn't matter, because those people have the same ideals we do, which is we want to be able to run our business like a business, and we want to be able to provide housing. But what we're starting to see is it's hitting the banking industry slightly as well. So we've been speaking with the Mortgage Bankers Association, and banks are not going to be as incentivized to provide lending to our investors. They're going to lose prepayment revenue, prepayment penalty revenue in years 1, 2, 3, 4, where you usually see your investors purchase a property, put money into it, increase their rents, and then reinvest in another piece of property. The banks are going to lose out in that situation. And then ultimately what we're going to see, as Judd alluded, is a bunch of tax assessment challenges. And when the landlords get out from having to pay the full value on the property, it's going to be passed on to the public at large. So this is not, again, they want to, the other side of what we keep hearing is they want to fight for homelessness to be addressed. We can't do that as a group of private landlords. We can, however, provide the good housing that we've continued to provide. And so if we keep pushing on the landlords of this state, ultimately those people are going to be forced out of the market. A lot of them are already being in a situation where they can't pay their own staff, or they can't pay their own taxes. And they're really just trying to make a living. So when the push is on the landlord, it's not doing any service to the residents and the people that we stand for to protect. Under One Roof is our coalition for anybody who's interested in that. And looking at that, it's underoneroofny.org. We do stand for a coalition of landlords as well as tenants and industry partners, all who are looking to make sure that we preserve the good landlords and the housing that we provide in the state.
And just remember, there's not a landlord out there that I know of, and I've been doing this for decades, that says, I want to buy a piece of property and I don't want to rent the units. There's no landlord out there also that I know of that says, I'm going to rent to Mrs. Jones and in 2 months I'm going to evict her.
No one wants to evict.
The landlords as a whole do not go out there and say, we want to evict people. We want to house people. That is the ultimate goal, and house as many people as possible and for everybody to benefit. Again, the building, the neighborhood, and the communities at large all benefit with full housing. Any questions?
Does that include price freeze?
Pardon me?
Rent freeze? I'm sorry, I lost my voice.
So the good cause eviction,
Yeah,
Rent
Are you
freeze.
talking about rent control?
Limitations on raising rents.
Yes. That's part of the good cause.
so right now there's an opt-in provision under the new Texas law for areas outside of the 5 boroughs, Rockland, Nassau, Westchester counties. For upstate areas like this city, you would have to exercise an opt-in, which Albany started the process for. So there's no universal rent control mechanism automatically. It has to be opted into by proof of the fact that there's a housing emergency, which is, the definition is that there's 5% or less of available housing in that area. Right now that's not occurred yet. With the good cause eviction, it would be across the state, and it would not be based on certain classifications. It would be across as a whole, and that looks like it would be 1.5% plus CPI. That measurement is something that's not fixed until the bill obviously passes.
Right, and to further your question, if you think about that, the municipalities that are right now entertaining the idea, they're spending tax dollars in order to pull all this information and then decide whether or not it's necessary. I don't know any municipality that's sitting so flush that can waste taxpayer dollars and try to pull this information together, which, by the way, is available from organizations for free, but based upon the way the law is, they can't use that information. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Can the compulsion for not evicting somebody, can that be fought legally?
Yes.
Yes.
So, I mean, there's a federal lawsuit that's obviously been in play for some time on this issue, and it speaks to all that. But I mean, both sides of the argument there. What the tenant unions want is to eventually get into a situation where there would be no evictions at all, and that's the path they want to go down, to say that you can't evict somebody. But if you look at the statistical data, 9 out of 10 persons that are evicted for non-payment of rent. And so the new good cause eviction would not change that statistic, because that's going to be one of the reasons why you can evict, for non-payment of rent. So I think that's where we have to focus the argument on in terms of the eviction situation is, are we supposed to, as landlords, not be able to collect rent? Because that's going to lead certain of our members to potentially be in dire straits. So, I don't.
But just realize, and your question is excellent. Evictions for non-payment of rent is 2% or less. 2%. Think about that for non-payment of rent. And that's after most landlords or property management firms have exhausted everything possible to come up with a payment plan to try to keep that resident or that resident and their family housed.
That's why these laws too are so poor in favor of the tenant, because it used to be that you'd be able to evict somebody within 28 days. So in the same month you brought it in, you'd be able to get your warrant and have it served and have the tenant out. Now we're seeing 90 to 120 days. There's no incentive for a landlord to begin working with a tenant to try and push off an eviction, because if they do, it's just wasting time. So it's actually disincentivizing landlords to work with the tenants any further, even though most of the landlords are saying, I want to, but if I don't start the process now, I'm gonna be 4 or 5 months down the road without getting any rent. And then there's state provisions which could preclude the landlord from getting anything for a longer duration of time. So I'd like to say this isn't about evictions. It's much deeper for our group to fight against in terms of the messaging of this is just not helpful for the affordable housing, the increase of housing, for development. It's hurting every aspect of it, because we're just ultimately going to lose the investors in the state.
Just one before I ask your question. One thing you want to think about. So there's voucher programs that are out there. I'm sure people are familiar with Section 8 MUD and other voucher programs that are presently available. There's not enough vouchers out there. So if the state and the federal government really want to get more involved, they would provide those vouchers. Therefore, landlords would have more of an incentive to take that risk on a person that's on the cusp. Your question, sir?
Yes. Hello, Charlie Duffy from Westchester County. We had a very group of owners throughout New York State. Westchester County is going to be markedly different from, say, in upstate county. And a lot of these rules and provisions are so onerous that it just forces the 1 and 2 unit, the in-law apartment to not be rented, causing people to lose their homes. If you could provide us with, we have your website you just said about, but a way to help the leaders of our party reach out to their specific areas to be able to tailor to the difference between, say, where I'm from and something in Western New York or upstate New York. Please send that to our leaders so we can get it out to our groups.
So we have to wrap up here, but what I will say is we are working with Westchester's building group. There's a group, a side of that has an association of about 200 landlords. We are working with that group actively. To us, all the state has the same issues. You can make it, as you said, personalized to your area. If you go on Under Wonders, there's a letter campaign that you can use, which will address specifically your concerns directly to your local representative.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.